Welcome to the Curiosity Solution. I'm your host, Beverly Beal. Join us as we explore the science of curiosity, share stories of people who've used curiosity to improve their lives, and maybe inspire some aha moments along the way. Welcome again to the Curiosity Solution. I'm your host, Beverly Beal with the Intuitive Interior, and today's guest is Michelle Harvey. Michelle and I met, oh gosh, how many years ago is it now? At least, well, I got here since at least probably around 9 years ago because we moved to the Austin area in 2016 and attended a networking event. And there was this incredibly bright light that, when you meet people, you are just drawn to them and you don't know why. And Michelle was one of those individuals. And the more I got to know her, the more curious I became about her origin story, about how her brain worked, and it's just how she created this incredible family of hers, which is so important. The consciousness behind the parenting, the conception, just the relationships. I just found a really, really good opportunity that now we get to actually have a conversation about it and share this with my audience. So, Michelle, let's go ahead and just kind of get a little bit of a background. Why don't you share with the listeners, what you're currently doing, and what you did before, and just kind of give us a quick little overview of your 30-second elevator pitch.
Awesome. Well, it's hard to do the 30. I'm super all over the place when it comes to those elevator pitches because I'm like, wow, there's just so much to say. First of all, it was such a pleasure meeting you. Little did I know back then when I met you how instrumental you were going to be in my life. So I just want to get that out of the way. It was a blessing. It was just a blessing that I didn't even know I needed, was having you in my life. So thank you so much for that. Elevator pitch, I am a stay-at-home mom right now who is relaunching her coaching practice. And I started actually out as a teacher, a middle school science teacher. I absolutely love educating kids. I love speaking. I love music. I love all of the things that I was doing. But in the education world, I felt like there was a box put around me. I'm a very, as you know, like almost flamboyant individual. And
almost flamboyant? Okay.
There was always so much in that box of public education that I felt like I needed to bust out of that. And so that's when I got into the coaching world. I think it was 2014 or 2015. And that's where we met because I was, going to the networking groups to promote my coaching practice. Well, I ended up coaching a few people. I ended up coaching 3 or 4 people, 6 to 9 months. And it was somewhat successful, but it didn't really feel like the right fit at the time. Apparently I had some life to live and I had to become a mother. And when I became a mother, which you're a huge part of that story, motherhood just took the role front and center. It fit me lock and key. It was something I wanted to pour my heart into. So for the past 6.5 years, 2 children later, I'm now finally feeling like I want to break out of just this motherhood role that I've been pouring so much of my energy into and start servicing the world with my gifts. And the 10 years that have lapsed since I got my coaching certification, or less than 10 years there or so, where I'm like, now I feel like I can actually really provide more to my potential partnerships that I end up working with. So thank you for asking.
Well, you're welcome. Yeah, I also have 2 children, and there is really not a finite, that's not the right word, but there's that period of intensity with motherhood when the children are really young. Like yours are, how old are your children again?
So 6 and some change for my firstborn, and almost 10 months for my second, a little bit larger gap between kids.
Yeah, and so you have it in a split there where you were able to really be very intentional and attentional with each of them when they were in their very early stages. Mine were a little closer together. Mine were only 2 years and 9 months apart. And that is for someone who's very sensitive, especially back in those days. I didn't know how intuitive and sensitive I was. I just knew that I felt overwhelmed and frustrated nearly 24 hours a day. You at least have a more consciousness around that and can articulate not just for yourself but also for your children. I've seen how you've been parenting them, and it's absolutely beautiful. But let's get back to the whole curiosity piece. So where do you, so you talked about, when you were teaching and how you were more flamboyant, and you were expressing that again, there goes a lot of curiosity has to be around teaching and how to reach middle schoolers. Most people think of middle school teachers as either incredibly one step next to an angel, or absolutely insane. And I do think
There's
it's a
some mixture of the two.
there you go. But tell me more about this box that you found yourself in and how that felt in your body versus when you shifted out of that. Tell me more about how that impacted your physical body.
Yeah, so on some level, being a middle school science teacher was able to fulfill a love for me and a passion and a creativity, because I got to create lessons. I ended up doing something completely different from probably 99% of teachers, and I started writing and performing science raps for my students. I was able to really kind of make it my own, which is why I lasted 7 years. However, there is so much red tape, bureaucracy. There are so many things in the education world that unless you've been there, you know what it's like, where, oh, you've got parents complaining about this, or you've got behavior issues here. There are things that you have to tend to. You're teaching classes that are filled with kids of all abilities, and you've got to reach them all. You don't have the aid and the help that you need. You might have an aide popping in there for 20 or 30 minutes servicing 1 or 2 children, when really you could use help for your entire classroom of 26 kids.
If you're lucky, it's only 26.
Right. Some classes are close to 30. And then, that's a lot for one teacher to manage. And I felt like back then in my 20s, I had good classroom management skills, but it was more like, man, I wanted to branch out. Like, my students loved the astronomy unit, and it was our shortest unit. It was 3 to 4 weeks, and I could only go into it. They would ask more and more questions, and I would be able to stoke that curiosity only so long before I'm like, all right, guys, we got to get to physics, or we got to get to another unit. And so kind of that feeling, that pressure of somebody on the outside saying, this is what you have to teach. This is the way it needs to look. You need to have this many kids passing, and if not, your butt's going to be called to the table. All of that kind of just started to feel real constrictive. And I started having some health issues. We were trying to get pregnant at that time. That little did I know that stress was basically impeding that from the get-go. I was trying to parent my husband's daughter at the time, my bonus daughter, and I was trying to give her everything that I needed to give her. Yet I was coming home kind of a shell of myself after pouring out so much energy into a system that, I don't want to call it a broken system, but a system that is not always designed to benefit every single child that's in it.
Yeah. But again, my mother actually was a teacher when she actually ended up getting like a 6-month emergency teaching certificate during the time during World War II, and taught in a 1-room schoolhouse with, I think, 8 kids in 4 grades.
Wow.
Ranging from, I think she said 3rd grade to, I think it was 3rd grade through 8th grade, because at the time 8th grade was all that was required in the middle of Kansas. Yep. And yeah, she would talk about how difficult that would be, but that was only 8 compared to 24, 30, whatever. But that is very interesting. So when you're talking about it impacting your body, it sounds like for you it was more of a systemic thing.
Oh yeah.
So now when you think about curiosity, where in your body do you feel that?
Curiosity for me happens in largely two places. One of them, so I have a lot of error in my chart, and I have a lot of thought energy. I've always been a thinker, sometimes an overthinker, an overanalyzer, but that's also where curiosity comes out too. It's,
Mhm.
I wonder if, what if we did it this way? And that would always come into play as a teacher, like, oh, this group of kids, I'm not able to reach them. How could I reach them in a different way? That's where the raps came in, stuff like that. So it tends to start in my brain for me. And then now, like, since I'm in my 40s now, it's like I've changed and some evolved some since my 20s. And I feel like it's coming more in my heart. It's like a
Mm.
heart deeper knowing that there's more questions than there are answers. And if we think about things from this perspective or this perspective, or hey, I hadn't really considered that, it almost comes from being heart centered and heart led. Of course, the brain, that connection is there, and there's still a lot of thought energy, but a lot of it's coming also from just a state of having an open heart. It feels expansive, it feels opening.
That I love that. My personal viewpoint is that as humans, we are the ones who connect heaven and earth. We are the conduits between the divine inspiration and then the grounding of that into the three-dimensional world. So everything, if it's the heart coherence is so important. Um, when you are feeling that heart energy, how then do you take that and ground it into this, I mean, the world that we're living in? I mean, I love meditating. In fact, I just came off of a really lovely hour-long meditation. And so I'm feeling like, woohoo, this is really a nice place to be. But it's taking that then from that head piece, moving it into the heart. How do you then take it, that heart energy, and shift it into the grounded energy that we need to move things forward on this planet?
Well, the old me, the old go getter Capricorn would say, well, you do something, you take inspired action. And that's still true. But the me that is evolving right now is having more of a patience, and it's kind of sitting with it, and it's listening for that inspired action to come. So it's not feeling like you need to, like, get out of that meditation and, okay, what can I take and do with this? It's okay, I'm going to continue to be still. I'm going to continue to be present with my children. I'm going to continue to maybe even dawdle a little bit and not feel like I need to go out and turn that into some sort of grounded action until the opportunity drops in and presents itself. This is because I've been learning more to access that feminine surrender, let it come to me, and then the masculine comes out. Whereas before I was so masculine, so driven, so I got to make this happen. So you got to earn that cash. We got to do this, that, and the other. And so it's been really refreshing to actually drop in and allow the opportunities to present themselves, to ground and use that, and then take inspired action into, hey, you know what would it look like to go and throw some love out and volunteer at the animal shelter, or go take my kids to a beach cleanup, or go write a post online about something that's affecting me right now. So
Mm.
yeah.
So yeah, what you just described there is in Feng Shui, it's that yin and yang, excuse me, I keep pronouncing it wrong. The philosophy, where you have that image of the circle that with like two commas with a white comma with a black dot and a black comma with a white dot. Without the balance of that yin energy, that what you're calling feminine energy, the yang energy, that action oriented energy, is just dissolves into vapor and exhausts a person. So I really appreciate the way that you explained it, because that really is that yin yang principle. Um, so what, you talk a lot about motherhood and how you had a 7 year experience in the school system, and now you said you're about 6.5, almost 7 years uh, with the motherhood experience, for at this point in time, because of course getting you to the place where you became a mom took several attempts. And so again, for the listeners, one of the ways that Michelle and I worked together was to help uh, facilitate fertility. Um, and let's talk a little bit about that journey that it took you. How long did it take for you to, from the time that you really began in earnest uh, to conceive until you actually had your son?
7 years. Yep. I was 28 when we started. So when I got married, I was 23 and was not ready for children. We had my husband's daughter, my bonus daughter. So we'd already had kids. And then, but I, of my own, and to like do the whole birth and birthing your own kids into this world was a little overwhelming to me. So it took to me where I was about 28 and I was like, all right, I'm ready. Let's do this. Little did I know it was going to take 7 additional years, and I wouldn't have my first till I was 35. And that was one of I now know it was a part of my divine plan. All these dark nights of the soul that we walk through are for a purpose, to help other people, now other women, consciously call in their babies. And I had no idea that when I met you, you were going to be instrumental in that, because I thought it was just a physical infertility. I had no idea about the metaphysical, spiritual, emotional, mental blockages to getting pregnant. Some mental, but like the spiritual and the like ancestral work that you do.
Yeah.
It was totally new to me. You shattered my paradigm. And now because of that, I know that that's sometimes these young, 20 something year old girls that I used to teach that are trying to get pregnant. I can be like, hey, if you've gotten all your ducks in a row and you're eating well and you've got your supplements and you're doing all this stuff and you're still not getting pregnant, there's probably something else there.
One of the things that I mean, would you like to share what some of the things were that we worked on? Because I don't want to speak for you.
Absolutely. I've shared you with so many of my friends and family because
yes,
of
you
how
have.
the story has been.
Yeah. So
do you share it, or do you?
Absolutely. No, I want you to share. I want to hear it from your perspective, because I know from mine, I can fill in, but I think it's more important for people to hear what your experience was.
So when we did a class together, you opened up your home and you allowed me to bring in my essential oils, which was another thing I was doing for money and for growth. And after the class was over, you looked at me intuitively, as you do, and you said, I feel like the inability that you and your husband have had to getting pregnant is not physical. I feel like there's some stuff that we could work together. And I came home and I said, hey, babe, this girl Beverly wants to work. She wants to do a session with me. Is like and at the time it was a little bit of a stretch for us financially. But I said, I'm feeling a yes in my spirit. I said, I feel like we need to try it. It might, it may not work, but hey, it's worth a shot. And then of course, my husband is so open. I'm so thankful for him not being like, that's weird. Don't hire her for something like that. So we had one session together, and you said it was really weird. You wanted me to be in the bathtub. You're like, I don't typically do this.
No, and you're still the only person that has I have had be in a bathtub.
I remember it. It is so clear. So without going too into detail, I remember that there was stuff in one of my ovaries. There was stuff having to do with my husband's ex-wife, who did not like me, the mother of my bonus daughter. That she had placed inside of me, like unknowingly, energy stuff that was just so odd. After that session, like 2 or 3 weeks later, I had a big red pimple pop up on my left ovary, on my stomach, like where my left ovary would be. I have never had acne anywhere on my body besides my face, maybe a few on my back. It was so random, and you were like, "Oh yeah, that's toxins coming out or whatever." And then that next month I was pregnant with Jackson, and we had no miscarriage, and we now have a son named Jackson who is a fireball just like me. I mean, I could not have written that in a book the way that it happened. It was just the coolest thing. I mean, you cleared ancestral stuff. I mean, just it was all new to me back then.
Well, and I do also remember that I had energy tested to see which essential oils you needed to add to your bath because they really needed to permeate in you. And through your classwork and other research of mine, I understand that there is such an emotional connection. Each of these essential oils can elicit different frequencies, and that also then targets different emotions and other experiences. And so that's kind of like how my whole fire cleanse, my space clearing is now all tied into that. But that was something that was, again, that was a bigger reason why you needed to be in the tub so we could pull this out. Because so again, one of the other things that has come up, not just with you, but with other women who are dealing with infertility, is this resonance, this whether it is a genetic inheritance or a past life experience with challenges during either pregnancy or childbirth. Because like it or not, having a baby is not just this super simple little thing for a woman just to squeeze one out. We are not Pez dispensers. um, and it's traumatic. And even if in a past life we were not a woman, we would have to watch these women in our lives go through this. Like for me, my mother lost her mother through childbirth. It apparently was a gestational diabetes. The baby was too big, and my grandmother was too stubborn to try to go to a doctor and died at home. And, my mom was 3. And she may not have heard what was happening, but yeah, that's the kind of thing that can impact us on a genetic level or an inherited level that we don't know about. And that film, that filter is there. And, thank you for trusting me to, go through this really strange process, but it was so huge.
Also since you bring up childbirth, you also did a session, I'm sure you remember, for me, surrounding giving birth naturally without meds. I was terrified, but I knew I was supposed to do it. And here it was approaching I think it was like maybe even just 2 weeks before I was to give birth. And I was like, Beverly, I need a session because I know I have some fear, and I do not want to go into this birth with fear. And after that session, it was complete shift of energy for me. I felt ready. I felt prepared. Now, nothing could have prepared me for the 17-hour labor that I went through, but it was a rite of passage. We got through it. I had my natural birth, and I credit that to you helping me discover that there was some, and I know on my dad's mom's side, there was some death with childbirth. And so that stuff lives in our DNA. It's passed down. And that's the crazy thing, that so many people don't know, that it's not just your own baggage that could be holding you back from things that you think you want. It could be your mom's mom or whatever that's still inside of your body that you're carrying. So your services are so valuable.
Thank you. Yeah, epigenetics is an up and coming field. Right now, there's not a lot of credence put yet on those inherited memories, even though they have plenty of studies on how mice react to certain, generations beyond the initial event, how they still retain the memory. Not everyone in that experiment, reacted the same way. They've correlations from grandchildren and uh, Holocaust survivors. There are certain correlations there as well. What I have found through working with clients like you and just my own experience is that it's a very real link. And I never question anymore when that information is coming in. We just go with it. So, which again, talking about all that head stuff, for me, I was always that everything was in the brain. And, I have a double Virgo placement. So, I'm not exactly prone to, hey, let's just go off into la la land. Let's do with all this research. So this has been a big leap for me too. But now that you have these two children, let's talk a little bit about how your curiosity and your knowledge of all of these other areas of interest and the epigenetics, et cetera. How are you noticing any patterns that may still that had been present in you? How you have, after you've shifted them, how's that impacted your kids?
Oh my goodness. Our kids are one of our greatest stimulants, catalysts, triggers, just like our spouses can be. For me, yep. I kind of lucked out there with Eric. We do trigger each other on occasion, but my children, or at least Jackson, being the 6-year-old that I've had more life with, has been the ultimate, hey, you still have some work to do when you look at it now, because you can look at it as, my child is causing me to be angry, or my child is causing me to revert back to the ways that I was maybe parented, or my parents were parented, that wasn't so conducive to raising heart-centered conscious children. Or you could look at it inside. Now, in the moment, oftentimes it's like, he's doing this. But upon reflection, and generally for me, the reflection doesn't take long. It's, I'm 20 minutes removed from my kid, and I'm like, okay, all right. There's still some old wounding in me that needs to be dealt with, because I want to show up better for my son. Yes, he is big energy. He does not have full control of his emotions. Yes, we're trying to work on that. And he's making gains. However, how am I showing up? How can I be a better facilitator for the growth of this child? So, holy moly, was not prepared when I got my son, because he's a lot like me, but he's so different from, I was a rule follower, obedient firecracker, yes, but like that came out a little bit later. Jackson was born out the womb that way. And I guess I just thought I had some time. And no, God, source, universe was like, no, we're going to let you start learning these things immediately with your son. And then, of course, Juniper I've had some different lessons to learn with her. So, but the kids are such catalysts, aren't they?
Oh my gosh. I honestly, as being the youngest of 8, I can't even imagine all the insanity that my mom and dad went through with all of us. I know that, so with my son was very similar to that catalyst that you're talking about, like just from the get-go. And I always joke that when I first looked at that plus sign on that stick, I didn't know that was actually and you get a baby and you get a PhD in patience. And I credit him honestly with this journey that I've been on, because I had to learn different coping techniques because of the just constant overstimulation. I had to learn how to ground myself, how to look at those triggers, how to then not make him the bad kid, because he's just being a kid. He's just being the human that he came on this planet to be. Yep. So yeah,
how amazing that I feel like our times have shifted to where we can actually really see that now, that this is developmentally normal, that this is just the way not all, some children are a little bit just dispositioned to be a little bit more of pleasers. but like, this is just the way that kids can be, because back then I'm sure there was far more judgment upon you if you didn't have your kid acting a certain way than there is on me today. And even still today, I sometimes feel like, oh my God, if I don't, get my kid under control, then like this person's gonna, I'm sloughing off that need for everyone to think the best of me. Because guess what? I know I'm doing the best I can with the kid that I was given. But
Right.
20, 30 years, 40 years ago, that was not where we were.
No, it's hard too when the advice that you're given from the, parents that you love and respect is, well, you just need to beat him more.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why aren't you spanking him more? It's like, yeah, that doesn't work.
Still get that.
Yeah. And so it's hard. It's very hard.
It doesn't, and it really does. I mean, because I have popped my kid. I didn't want to, but he has, you know, stoked it, and then I feel horrible, but it doesn't do any, it doesn't accomplish what we think
No.
it does, you know.
No, it didn't for me either. And it kind of teaches the wrong
Yeah.
message. It really does. But sometimes you just they're
Sometimes you're
even the most conscious parent has a limit.
I'm so glad I can laugh about it, because in the moment I'll have regret, and or, oh, you're such a bad parent. I'm like, no, you're not. You love your kid, and you're doing the absolute best you can with the overstimulation of your nervous system on a constant
Right.
basis. And I know, Miss Double Virgo, that a clean house really makes a huge difference, and a messy house can really do a number. And Feng Shui, what that mess does to someone who
Yeah.
likes order, and kids are just like the antithesis of order. They just bring chaos into your life,
Yep.
asking you to be okay with it. And
Yeah.
that has been one of my greatest. I'm staying curious and open to, what is this trying to teach
Well, so when my mother-in-law was still alive, she would come and so she was German and very, very orderly and neat and tidy. And so we still joke that when the kids were growing up and my mother-in-law would come over, everybody would like, okay, we got to get everything Nana clean before she gets here,
me?
or else, we're all going to hear about it. Uh, and but she always had time to make, she always made time to play and be, to do that. But she just, anyway, that we're kind of going off a different path. What I was going to talk about though is like when you were a child, I mean, did you, because like obviously you're rewarding your children, especially Jackson, because he's, as you say, the one that you've had more life with and you're doing more homeschooling with. Um, you're obviously sharing curiosity with him, letting him explore all of the things that his interest areas are. How was curiosity treated for you as a child?
Well, I was fortunate in that my parents kind of allowed me to be who I was and do what I wanted to do, even down to choosing whether or not I wanted to go to church and what church I wanted to go to.
Mm,
So fortunate, because I know that, at least back then in the 80s, a lot of parents, wanted to mold their children into being, okay, you've got these career choices, these career paths you can look into. You've got this church or spiritual affiliation you can choose, and that's that. Your days need to look like this. They're, quite structured. There was a lot of that happening in the 80s, but for me, my parents were a little more lax, and and as the firstborn, they allowed me to really be and explore who I wanted to be. I got to try out for cheerleading in middle school. I got to go out for dance, and like, nothing was off the table for me. Did my parents read to me and really stoke that and give me learning experiences, like taking me to all these museums and on all these trips? No, they didn't. They were doing the best they could to survive. My mom, was a stay-at-home mom. We didn't have a lot of money. So they didn't pour a ton into me, but they allowed me to have my own natural curiosity. They allowed me to go to the library where I could check out a maximum of 20 or 25 books at a time. And I did, and I would read and open them, read all of them, and then take them back in and get more. So that, I feel like that allowance from my parents, as opposed to somebody who has strict standards set on their kids of what's appropriate, um, is part of the reason why I'm such an openly curious and stoke curiosity in my own children. And now I take it one step further because I have the ability to stay at home and do these things to provide my kids with experiences that stoke their curiosity.
Isn't it fun taking them to the library?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that was my favorite thing as a child. And then I turned 8 and was old enough to learn how to drive tractor, and that kind of stopped.
Yeah.
So that was a bummer. Oh well. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about how you're using curiosity to approach any, like any current challenge that that you're facing.
Well, gosh, I'm like, which challenge do I choose? I feel like,
Well, you can talk about a couple. I mean, we've got plenty of time.
yes, okay. Well, right now, I'm sure it's no surprise to you that the world feels extremely um, divided. There's tension. There's just a lot happening that is scary. It's anxiety producing. And I'm seeing it on both sides. So, somebody being quite middle of the road politically, um, curiosity is one of my main engines. It's like my search engine, my search that I search in my heart for how can I stay connected to these people and not push both sides away or not stoke, division amongst these, this chaos myself. How can I stay curious and open about how these people are feeling, how these people are feeling? How can I be a conduit of love and unity in these very, very difficult times when it doesn't seem that way, and where even sometimes being a conduit of love and unity is in its own way like, stop, be angry with me, so curiosity is the name of the game for me right now in this big overwhelming challenge of what the world is going through. And then more on a personal level, as Eric and I branch out and re-go into our coaching businesses instead of working a 9-to-5 job, financially providing abundance, getting our family to where we're used to a certain standard of living. We're staying open, curious about what are some other flows of income that can supplement us so that we can do what we want and provide a service to the world without feeling like we have to go back into the strictures of something that we know is not our passion and our purpose, but something that we did for decades because we felt like we had to do. So those are just two areas right now where I see that curiosity is helping to further me, and instead of like keeping me stifled and like, oh, I have no idea what to do now.
That is a challenge to be in. Anytime you go through that kind of an employment, transition. I mean, you are not wrong. We are in a period of incredible transformation, and will be through the end of 2027, and well, actually early 28. And so finding that balance between staying curious and making sure you have food, it's a little squishy at times,
Mm-hmm.
but it's, as the child of a farmer, this feels so much like the planting season, where the ground has to get tilled after a period of being fallow, and the seeds are being planted.
Aren't we both feeling it right now? I'm feeling it. I can
Yeah.
see processing energy, and I'm feeling it here too.
Yeah. And even once you plant the seeds, you don't know if the weather is going to be conducive to letting them germinate. You don't know if there's so many weed seeds that were in that planting process, that are the weeds going to take over the actual crop that you want, or is are somebody who's heard of cattle going to get loose and completely destroy the field. And so that's kind of where we're at, and it's truly one of the most tenuous periods of time. next to the part where, oh my gosh, we are so close to harvest. We just have to wait, a couple more weeks. What do you mean there's a hailstorm?
Mm.
Oh, it
It's
is.
that whole or 2 steps backwards, 2.5 steps forward feel. It really
Right.
does feel that way right now. Like just squeeze, but like, how do we relax into that and see how this is working for us?
Right. And how to turn that 2 steps backwards, 2.5 steps forward into more of a cha-cha instead of the feeling like you're just never making any progress, because we are, and we will, because humanity cannot help but continue to move forward. It's just that pace.
Mhm.
So just like that gestation period that every pregnant woman knows, there are so many different feelings that go along with that. um, One of the things that I personally could tell the difference between the two children that I carried in my womb, that I could already feel the different personalities when they were in my womb. Could you feel the same thing with your two?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Jackson was a mover all day long, just constantly moving. I just knew he was here to do some things. And Junie's been a little bit more calm and was in the womb, and her birth was calmer. But yet there were punctuations of wild movement, and I already see that in her strong, stubborn tenacity as a Taurus. She has so much Taurus in her chart. And then the Leo rising, she's going to have some of that fire too. So yeah, like definitely felt the difference, and I see the difference early on too in their babyhoods. It's fun to
Mm.
compare them.
Yeah, my daughter's a Taurus as well, and she's very, very focused, knows what she wants, keeps working towards it. But her Gemini moon,
Mm, yep,
that makes her a lot of fun. I
yep,
really enjoy it. I
yep.
love both of my kids. They are so different, and that just makes for a lot of growth that everybody gets as parents.
Yeah.
So, one of the other questions that I like to ask my guests is about their Phoenix rising moments. So like, if there's that experience that just kind of makes you feel like you just have to transmute something.
Mhm.
You burn up, you reduce to ashes, and then you come back. Would you care to share what your particular Phoenix rising moment
Mm.
was?
Gosh, I've had so many of those, or at least, like 3 or 4 good ones. But the most recent one, since we've been on the topic of motherhood and children, has been when I got ill, as you know, but people may not know that I lived in Colorado in a rental house, and there was mold in there, and it was slowly making me sick, intoxifying my system. And I struggled with chronic illness. And I did all the things to, once I figured out, we moved out of the house. I did all I even had you muscle tests for me on what, TRS spray to detox. And I was doing so many supplements and cutting out so many foods, doing elimination diets. And it was giving me small gains here and there. And we weren't, we got pregnant and then had a miscarriage. So that, again, that lotus is still in the muck down there. The phoenix hasn't risen yet. We're RVing. We're living in an RV to get out of that house. And then it was like all of a sudden one day I was like, I'm so tired of struggling with all this mud, all this muck down here. And I found heart coherence, and I found hypnosis, and I found mind body healing through Dr. Kim Duramo. All of these things, again, back to what you helped me to discover about the infertility not being a physical issue. I started feeling like healing my body was no longer really about the physical, what can I cut out, what can I put in, and more about the mental, emotional, how can I love myself? How can I
Mhm.
love myself right where I'm at? I was 102 pounds.
You were so
I
thin.
yo-yo. I was so thin because everything I ate, like nothing was being put onto my body. Like just nutritionally, I wasn't taking in the nutrition. But I was also despising my body. Like I was looking at myself in the mirror and just being so upset that I wasn't pregnant. I was super thin. I couldn't eat very many foods. When I found the heart coherence, mind body medicine, self love, I like stopped focusing on everything else and just went inside and started focusing on myself. Boom, I got pregnant. Boom, I started putting on weight. Boom, I could eat more foods. And my life has never been the same since. We have Juniper here. I sense myself going into some shame again because Juniper has nursed me back down to a very small weight. And I'm like, no, Michelle, we don't do that. That's our old programming. We don't shame our bodies. My body is beautiful. My body is providing sustenance for my daughter. You are eating, you are whole, you are healthy. This Virgo eclipse that's coming is helping me to shed stuff that's no longer working for me physically. I'm choosing nutritional, foods. All of that has helped me to burst forward into this woman who knows and loves herself. And when I find myself not loving myself, nope, old programming, we don't do that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead and feel the tears, go ahead and feel the fear, whatever it is that's coming up, because you can't ignore that that's there.
Nope.
Don't actually bypass that. Feel that, release it, and then go back to love, go back inside to who you really are. It's been amazing. Phoenix.
I love that. I love that. So you mentioned a term there, spiritual bypass. Can you, for those who are listening that may not be familiar with that term, can you explain a little bit more about how that shows up for you?
It's the whole like only love and light allowed, or we're only moving upwards, we're only envisioning our highest and best good, and not sitting with and being okay with the shadows, with the parts of ourselves. It's ignoring the parts of ourselves of how we've contributed, how we have brought this situation, like our own, taking ownership for the reasons why things may not be going the way that they're going. We cannot just ignore and constantly seek to experience the light and bring the light in without dealing with the dark and without dealing with the shadows, and allowing other people to be where they are without pushing them into something that they're not ready for. I feel like that's spiritually bypassing. If I'm in a group and I see somebody that's just like not allowing somebody to talk about something that's a little bit on the darker side or doesn't feel as good, I'm like, oh no, we allow everything here. We love all parts of ourselves. We love the parts of ourselves that are not lovable. I mean, isn't that the point? It's easy to love the people that are being lovable. It's easy to love the parts of ourselves that are lovable. It's hard to love the people who are not being lovable and the parts of ourselves that are not lovable. That's the work. That's what we're here to do. So spiritually bypassing is ignoring all of that and spiritually opening up to loving the whole and recognizing how there's a bigger purpose in all of it. To me, that's where we're getting collectively.
Right.
I can see it happening.
I love your explanation there. That's incredible. In many ways, I feel like that's what when I see friends who's like, I've cut out all the people that are on the opposite side of the political spectrum. I don't even talk to my family members anymore. And I'm like, that is like the ultimate, spiritual bypassing, because you don't want to deal with that level. Because at some, we all have judgmental pieces of ourselves, because that is how you notice it. And when you heal that, you start to, at least for me, when I notice when I'm getting real bitchy about certain viewpoints or how certain people are saying things, etc., the first thing I have to do is look inside myself. Is like, why is that even showing up in my field? Where am I harboring that same frequency? And then once I can go in and do the work around it, that person either drops off and doesn't show up in my world anymore, or the charge isn't there. The guitar string connecting us no longer gets twanged. And so it's not that, it's like, okay, well, you're over here making, annoying noises, but I don't have to listen. It doesn't have to bother me But none of that would have happened without fixing it within me first. Now, I am not of the opinion that everything outside of us is a part of us. I don't believe that anymore. I do believe that everybody out here and that is showing up out there doing their things that may be bothering us, that is a piece of their karma that they're working through. That doesn't necessarily mean that I have to participate in that.
Yeah.
But I also firmly believe that there's a piece inside of us that we always have to be aware of, like you said, in order to be able to stop our participation in expanding the pain or expanding the problem.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. So let's talk a little bit more about your coaching practice. Who are you ideally working with? And what is the type of protocol that you would be most interested in creating for this?
So women and teens, back when I coached, because of my history of working with teens and as a teacher, I'm very drawn to if these teenagers are open to having somebody that they can talk to that's not a parent, that can just help them work on some of their own self-empowerment. Because if we can get these girls when they're young and going through, oh my gosh, I would not want to be a teenager today. If we can get them feeling empowered in who they are and what they have to give to this world from a younger age, that would absolutely be a dream come true for me. I'm about to start coaching one of my friend's daughters. I'm going to be having a chat with her soon, and I'm super stoked because that younger generation, man, they really are going to be seeding the new earth. It's amazing. But women, typically women who are either trying to get pregnant or are pregnant early on, and they want to kind of nurture this pregnancy in a way that feels good to them and maybe a little bit less mainstream. So I would love to work with pregnant women and women who want to get pregnant, as somebody who has been through that. Women who struggle with body issues, because of my own struggle with body issues, I've tended to be more on the underweight, but I've also been overweight as well. I've yo-yoed, but I know that self-love is such a key. And so I love to work with women who just want to love themselves deeper. So really, I'm sticking with women and teens. My husband is mainly doing more of his work with conscious manhood. And so I would be so excited if anybody would just want to reach out to me to have just a discovery call to see if we're a good fit to work together.
Fantastic. Well, we'll certainly have your contact information in the show notes. Just real quickly, one of the things you're talking about with, working with these teens, I think that's that is the teen girls. Will your husband be working with teen boys?
You know what? He has not said anything like that, but maybe you just piqued my curiosity, and you might have piqued his, because I tell him everything. We tell him everything. He's been telling me about his conversations he's been having with you, and I tell him about my conversations I have with you. So that's an idea.
Because I have been working with just very peripherally with a nonprofit based here in the Austin area that is discussing a lot of the sextortion that so many of these teen boys get caught up in, and they don't even know what to do, and far too many of them have committed suicide because of it. I mean, it's such a I get chills.
Wow.
But teen boys are floundering. And if I'm just going to plant that seed for your husband.
I have chills. Yeah, I'm definitely going to relay that to him. I think he's open. I mean, my husband is heart wide open.
Yes.
Wherever he can plug in and help. If there's a need for it, if people are willing to work with him or want their teens to work with him, I think he would be all over that.
And I can also see the two of you eventually working even with family units, as like just to help people stop banging against each other for that maximum harmony. Because again, it's so much of like you said, it's about self-love, about self-respect, and about really knowing that it's okay if you don't have all the answers.
Mhm.
You just need to be open to finding them.
Yep.
So, well,
Yep.
Michelle, time has absolutely flown by. I cannot believe that we are already at 55 minutes. Now, the date that we're recording this is in mid-March. This will probably not air for about a month. But I can still be promoting things. So I'll make sure I have your information. I will absolutely encourage everybody who is interested in any of these topics to please contact Michelle. She is a phenomenal resource. Obviously, if you are wanting to also work with me too, I'll have my information in the show notes. We do tandem work. That is the partnership that I am also excited about promoting. But in the meantime, I want everybody to stay curious and just know that the world is a magical place. Even when, right now it might seem in some areas of life, the magician has made stuff disappear. It comes back, and often in a more beautiful and amazing way.
Mm.
Yeah. So, all right. Thanks, everybody, and have a marvelous day.